Hey guys, Darren Kelly, Coach of Wise Pods, and welcome back to the final episode of Trade Mode for 2025. The moment has arrived. We are entering the final round of the AFL Fantasy season, which is saddening for a lot, but also exciting for 99% of the competition that have pretty much given up for the past couple weeks, if not months. So it's an exciting time. It means we have some very important trades and some very important scenarios to discuss this week. We've got two more trades left to go in the season, so we want to try and make the most of them. And it really comes down to what scenario you're in. I'd imagine that most of you that are watching are still in the hunt for prizes, if not hats, or maybe you're just a fanatic that absolutely loves fantasy no matter how bad you're going. But I wanted to go through a couple scenarios that if you're in a if you're in a really good spot and obviously you're contending for a hat, a car, top 10 prizes, even if you're just looking at some matchups overall, I've got some different couple scenarios that we need to discuss around what you should be doing around your trades to go from there. So I'll get straight into it before we get into the trade out and trade out targets as I normally do. But the first scenario is you're just outside the top 100. Maybe your team's just been hovering around there for a little while. Realistically, you probably need to be within about 100 points of the top 100 at this stage to really be a chance to move into the top 100. You need to make a difference, right? So you need to go for that ceiling. You realistically have nothing left to lose because what's the point of finishing 150th compared to 350th or whatever? So realistically, you're just trying to do everything you possibly can to get inside that top 100 to secure the hat, right? So go unique, find someone that isn't highly owned in the top 100. We'll talk about some of those players for the trade-in options later in this video, but I'm sure you already got a couple off the top of your head. You can see a couple on the screen already. Mana is someone that a lot of people are trading in this week, but he's extremely lowly owned, 4.3%. Golden, Heaney, both sub 10%, and there's others as well. So I think that's just what you're going to do if you're in that sort of position. Go for broke, try and get unique, and make some differences from your team from the top 100 and hope it falls your way with a few ceiling scores. That's going to make up the difference of those points to get you inside. On the opposite side of that, maybe you're inside the 100 already. Maybe you're in that 20 to 100 range. You're probably looking to defend, right? You realistically, you're not a chance to get into the prizes at this stage. Looking at the rankings, there's 100 points between number one and number two, right? So without jinxing it, it looks like number one's locked up at this stage. I know when I was up there, I only had 20. Sorry, I think I had 50 points going into the final round, and I felt pretty comfortable about that. So I'd imagine in their position, they'd be feeling pretty comfortable to be able to close out the remaining week and close out and get that high luck. So, but even going into 10th place, where the prize starts, there's a lot of points difference between 10th and 20th. So it's really unlikely that you're going to make that jump. So realistically, you're just trying to lock in a hat at this stage. So you're looking to defend, and you're probably just trading in highly owned players inside the top 100 that could hurt you. So if you don't have a Bailey Smith, for example, you absolutely need him. Lockie Whitfield, very similar. I'd be looking there. Brian Myers, all these sort of guys in Max Holmes, all these guys that could absolutely go massive this week that you do not have in your team is where I'd be looking. So looking to get on the defensive and get those highly owned players and match the people around you. So you're unlikely to move drastically, right? So that's another scenario. The third one I have here is maybe you are fighting for the prizes, right? Maybe you're in that top 20, maybe you're just outside the top 10 from that 10 to 20. I know it's a very small population of people, but that's just what happens this time of year. The views are certainly down, but a lot of the people, there's still prizes on the line. So you're fighting for prizes, so simply I'd very much consider you guys in the same sort of boat as the guys that are outside the top 100. You're close enough that you could get prizes, so you might as well fight. and try and get to there. So I think you should go unique, shoot for the stars, and try and make that leap, because I think it's very unlikely that you're going to drop out of the top 100 at this stage. Like I said, you're probably a couple hundred points clear of 100th spot, so it would take a lot to go against you to drop out at this stage. So I'd be fairly comfortable just to get unique and shoot for the stars to try and get those prizes, because that, yeah, doesn't really matter if you finish, say 12th over, say 34th or even 60th. You could probably argue a little bit, but at the end of the day, I think you'd rather have some money in your pocket than not. So I'd definitely be shooting for the stars if I was in your position. So yeah, get unique and try and make that leap. But yeah, I did say that number one will just be defending, right? They've got a pretty good spot, a pretty good point lead on everybody else, so they'll just be looking to trade in players from the teams that are chasing them. They'll be looking at number one, number two, number three, number four, all those sort of guys that are within sort of reach, maybe 150 points, and just trading in players that they think are going to damage them. So that's a little bit of scenario around rankings. In terms of league matchups, it's slightly different because it's not something I hugely specialize in what I've said previously. But what I'd be doing is I'd be looking at my matchups, and I'd be looking at, okay, what are the differences? What are the matchups that are going to hurt me? And really just try and make a judgment call of, okay, is my team in a stronger position and I feel comfortable at this stage? Could I get on the defensive and trade in the players that maybe I don't have that are going to go well, what we expect them to go well, and that they will have, or you're projected that then they're going to have, so you can get on the defensive and do that? Or are you, on the opposite side of that, where maybe you feel your team isn't as strong, try and get unique, try and get those ceiling scores that are going to make the difference, right? So that's just a little bit around those sort of things. So it's really either going unique or going defensive and getting these premium guys that have been stable all year. So that's a little bit around scenarios. I didn't want to dive too deep, but just really want to touch on that because at the end of the day, it's one more week of trades and there's only so much you can do. But yeah, because it is the final round, there is going to be some final round shenanigans. We've got players that are going to be rested for finals mid-game, one that just rolls off the top for me. Obviously, the likes of Geelong have Richmond. They're obviously top two at this stage. They're going to be resting players. So players like you'd expect Max Holmes, Bailey Smith, Tom Stewart, and I'm trying to think of who else would be out there. There's someone else I had named, but I cannot think of their name right now. Will more than likely finish on the bench with the last 10 minutes to go, and they'll have limited game time, right? They should get the game done comfortably, so I think they will spend some time on the bench. Similarly with Adelaide, against North, they will probably rest a fair few players as well. So like Dawson, obviously not ranking anymore, but Philthorpe, does he spend a little bit more time on the bench? At the end of the day, he's not fighting for a Coleman. They might as well get him ripe as possible for the final. Same with Tex. So these are the guys that you're just not really looking at. Not looking at, but something to be aware of when you thinking of captaincies. We know how big of a captain pick can be in terms of the different points. Harry Sheasel compared to Bontempelli was nearly 60 points on the weekend. So that difference can be huge. So when you're thinking of captains, those are the things you don't want to be considering. The other thing is laid outs may occur, obviously, with when we start to see that finals are starting to wrap up a little bit. As the week goes on, we're going to understand a little bit more, okay, who's in the finals, who's not. Then we may see a bit of a shift on what's some players being rested or not here or there. So yeah, you're just going to be aware throughout this weekend. If you're going to be on your watching this footy each and every game, this is probably one of the weekends to do it, along with obviously opening round and round one. I'd strongly encourage you try and watch as much footy this weekend as possible. Dead rubber games as well. Obviously, we saw on the weekend with Richmond and North Melbourne, they just went absolutely berserk. There wasn't no pressure, but there wasn't like they were absolutely tagging the shit out of somebody and stopping them from doing anything. So we're going to see those games that there's very little tagging going on. There's going to be a lot of chipping around, a lot of bruise, free footy. So stuff like that is going to happen, and we're going to have some inflated scores. So trying to pick up some of those guys that are going to have those big games could be absolutely massive. Someone that I just think off the top when I think of that, you know, a GWS, their backlines, they're probably just going to chip around a fair bit. So the likes of Ash and Whitfield are probably going to have some massive games. And finally, there are farewell games as well. So we see it every year. Obviously, legends retire. They have these farewell games, and typically they do pretty well. And I'm a big sucker for farewell games. Some names that come off right off the head is obviously Brokey from Port Adelaide. He's obviously a legend of the club, been around for a very, very long time. And obviously, a lot of footy fans love him, and obviously Port Adelaide himself. So, could he have a massive game? Are they going to give him the ball as much as possible? Are they going to give him the best role possible? Do they sneak him forward as well to get a couple of goals or whatnot? So there's going to be celebrations around these players that are no longer going to be with us in the years to come. So we could see some big ceiling scores from those players as well. So just to keep in mind all these things that are happening this round. So that's where I just want to touch on. But with all that said and done, we're already 11 minutes into this video, and I don't think we want this to be too long. Let's get into the trade out targets this week. So, if you have Isaac Rankin, I think you have to just trade. He's been given 5 weeks. I think it's been confirmed. I've seen rumors, but I haven't actually seen a formal post from the AFL website just yet. But Rankin is obviously the number one. He's not going to be playing this weekend. And it is very unlikely that their challenge is going to be overturned and going to be given nothing. So he unfortunately needs to go. Super unfortunate because he's been a pretty good soldier for a lot of the year. I've been an owner since round 1, and it would have been nice to see him through, especially in a nice matchup against North Melbourne. I was hoping he could put up a decent score to finish off. Hasn't been an amazing pick in terms of, overall selection from round 1, but has been pretty solid most of the year and been there or thereabouts in the top 6 for a while. So, just waving him goodbye. Unfortunately, he's done, so he needs to be traded out. He only has 807k on his head, so it doesn't leave you with a huge amount of options, but seeing what you can do with your money there will definitely help. So Rankin's number 1. Jack McRae, I do have as number 2. He is the most traded out player so far this week. And if you didn't know, the stat I've been hearing in every single podcast this week is he only had 55% time on ground this week. So that is just huge concerns. It really limits his ability to score, and he is dropping these bad scores. And he does have a tough matchup against GWS. And again, a lot of us are targeting these forwards that could absolutely go massive. Jezza Cameron, Bailey Smith, you don't have him, Sean Manor, all these sort of big matchups, even a few key forwards that we can look at. So I think he's clogging up a forward spot where we're looking for that big ceiling. He's not going to have that with 55% time on ground, so he can go. Sam Darcy is the next one for me. Key forward up against Fremantle, just does not spell for a good time, in my opinion. Had the 3 goals on the weekend against West Coast Eagles, which was hugely disappointing. I was definitely expecting double that at least. So yeah, he just is one that would go for me. Again, clogging up a midfield spot. The only thing I'll say with that is obviously the game against the Fremantle Dockers and Western Bulldogs. That's pretty much a final deciding game between the two. Obviously, whoever wins ultimately is going to end up playing finals, and the other one's going to miss out. Most likely, assuming that the Suns are going to win one, if not both of their matchups against the Essendon and the Port Adelaide. So it's a huge game. So they're going to need every single player firing, and this is going to be a pretty finals-like game. So I just don't know if I see Sam Darcy getting the pill that we sort of want him. Yes, he'll do some of the ruck relieving role as he usually does. He didn't do a huge amount on the weekend with Croft in the side, so that's a little bit of a concern. So maybe watch on for teams if Croft is still named. But yeah, I'm just not a huge fan of Sam Darcy at this stage with a pretty tough matchup coming. So he can go for me. Number 4, another one that has been in majority of our sides all season. We all started with him, and that is Caleb Daniel. Back-to-back 70s, and he had a 60 and a 70 before that 115. Comes up against the Adelaide Crows, which are a very, very tough matchup for designated kick-out players. They just provide a lot of pressure. So I think he's one that you can ultimately remove, and I don't think he's going to hurt you on the other side. I think, again, you're searching for that big ceiling. I don't think Caleb Daniel's going to have that. Just expecting another 70-ish score from him. So he's not an absolute must trade out because I don't expect a floor score from him. He's a pretty safe 70 at the end of the day. But when you're looking for that ceiling and wanting to make that difference, he's one that I expect to have a pretty big gap between his score and the player that you're trading in. So I like him going. The only caveat to that was he did score 115 against Adelaide back in round 3. This was when he sort of just started. He had 9 marks. I don't think we've seen that from him at all recently. Only that 8 marks back in round 21 against St Kilda, who are I think the best matchup for designated kick players at the moment. So I think Daniel can go. Number 5, I had Petrarca as well. He's just been very, very poor for a long period of time. And again, just getting him up to one of those players, a key forward, Mana, all these guys that could absolutely go massive. I just think the point gap is there. So that's sort of my top 5 trade out targets at this stage. A couple others to mention. I know a lot of people are trading at Connor Rosie. I'm just no on this. I'm looking at it in terms of it's Ken's last game, it's Brokey's last game. They're up against the likes of the Suns, so not that tough of a matchup. Yes, he's been poor last week, but with the farewell game, I'm expecting them to chip it around a fair bit, give Brokey a fair bit of the ball, and I think the captain's going to lead from the front to farewell hit their captain, sorry, their coach, and one of their club legends. So I'm just willing to hold Rosie. I would, though, however, loop him on the bench if you have the possibility. See how he goes. He does play on the Friday night, so you will be able to assess whether you want to take that score or not, and then potentially loop with hopefully a red dot there. So that's just my plan, and that's what I encourage everyone else to do. I wouldn't be trading him out at this stage, in my opinion. Brayshaw's the next one on this list. It's tough one. It's a really tough one because he has been very, very poor for the best part of 2 months, and I keep telling myself, they're fighting for finals. He's got to get up. He's got to get his team over the line. Yes, he's not the captain, but he's definitely a bigger figure in his team. So he's got to get there. So I just think he's going to pull out his finger this week. He has to. He's a big premium that we all sort of know he can be. He's averaged 110 in the past, averaging 102 for the season. Can he just finish off with a ton? I'll be happy with that. So, and even then, I don't think his floor's that bad. Like, he's had the low of a 76. Besides that, a lot of it is between 80 and 110. So I'm willing to back him in, but I know a lot of other people are in better positions than I am. That I just don't know if I see the ultimate point upgrade from a Andy Brayshaw to another midfielder that could absolutely be that massive, because Brayshaw could drop a 110 on your head at any point. So if you want to go a bit more left field, yes, he's super highly owned, so that is a way of making your team very unique. So that in that way, I could encourage it. But if you're just doing it based off of wanting to get a bit of a points upgrade, I don't think it's there, right? I think there's definitely other players that you could jump off of. Jackson's an interesting one as well. He's currently in Victoria, doing for some personal reasons. They do expect him to still play, but it definitely could be his last game for Fremantle if he does decide to request a trade back to Victoria in the off season. So there is something to watch here. They do play on Saturday, so they play the second last game. So ideally, if you can hold a trade for him, that would be nice, just in case he doesn't get up. But from all reports, he is preparing to play from while he's in Victoria. He's got some stuff some coaching staff that are going to help him. So yeah, he should be fine. Good to go. There's no reason why he should miss. And yes, he had a bad score last weekend, but that was just because they got quite heavily dominated. He spent the second half mostly as a full forward, so really couldn't get around the ball and get the usual touches that he does. So yeah, I'm not expecting to see that this weekend. They're gonna try their best, and they'll want both their best players around the ball, and he is definitely one of them. So I'd be backing him in this week. McCarthy was another one. I just skipped over. If you can get him up to a very good player, then I'd absolutely be doing that. He went up 26k. He's up to 750k now. He has just been an absolute amazing pick. But up against Sydney Swans, tough matchup. Yes, he's playing midfield, but I guess getting him up to someone that can put up an absolute ceiling score, then that's where I'd be going. He's even a downgrade to maybe like a Bokeh if you wanted to, just to search for that ceiling. So there's just so many different scenarios that you could look at. Again, we're only 1 week away from the season end, so you're not having to hold these players for very long. So it's just a one-hit wonder. So I think McCarthy can go. And the final one was another one. I know a lot of people are jumping off or talking about it. Was Josh Dacos. I am just not. Well, I would not be doing that if I was an owner. In my opinion, he comes up against Melbourne, who are a very nice matchup for defenders. So I think he would just rack it up. He scored 128 previously, and that was was his second best score of the season. So I think he finishes off with a very decent one. And again, Melbourne aren't challenging for finals. Collingwood obviously are. So Collingwood are probably going to try to play a bit of Brucey footy. So that means chipping around a fair bit and trying to possess the ball as much as possible to really limit the contests to be able to get them cherry ripe for finals. So I could see this man getting a fair bit of the ball back there, and I'd be holding, in my opinion. But besides that, I think that's probably all I needed to discuss. If you did have Davies, unfortunately, his suspension did get overturned, so you don't have to trade him out now. And I'd probably just advise holding, even though, hasn't been an amazing since that 111 that we saw on his return. So whether you keep him or not is up to you. McKercher, I have looked at this one a little bit, but he's just been so good for the best part of this second half that I'm just willing to see him through. But there is some concerns that he may cop some attention in this game. We saw Josh Dacos get a bit of attention from the Crows last weekend. I just don't think North are going to be as challenging as the Pies, so I just think Crows will get it done without needing the tag, so I don't think they'll do it. So I'm willing to back in McKercher. And that is probably about it, in my opinion, for the defenders. So let's move on to the ins that everyone wants to know about. So where should we start? We'll go the forwards because I guess that's where a lot of people are looking this week. If you just look at the top three there, it doesn't change a huge amount. But for my top 5 trade-in targets for the forwards this week, I do have Jeremy Cameron at 1. Again, don't need to repeat myself, but he will be hungry after last week having 0 goals. He will come out with steam coming out of his ears because we all know he's going for that 100 goals in the season. He has this week and then potentially has 3 to 4 games following this. So 4 to 5 games max to hit 21 goals. So he will want a big bag in this game, and I think his teammates will feed him a fair bit. So there is 10 goals on the cards here for Jeremy Cameron, especially with Blostone being injured for Richmond as well. They're going to have a pretty tough time trying to stop him. And with no Shannon Neal as well, there is even less of a target to share around for him. So they're going to be absolutely targeting him up there because typically it's either Shannon Neal or Jezza. No Shannon Neal with that suspension means that Jezza's going to get all the ball he wants in there. So I think this could be absolutely massive and even a potential VC option because the ceiling just could be absolutely massive. We've seen, obviously, he kicked 11 goals against North for a 157. So I think he can get the job done there. So I think he has the best ceiling of the lot. Number 2, though, I did have Brian Myers. He is the safer pick of the next couple, just with how consistent he has been. He's getting inside mid-time Again, the matchups there, hitting the scoreboard. He gets back to halfback and gets a lot of +6s as well. So I like him as a trade-in. He is a little bit more popular inside the top 100. So again, it depends on your situation, what you want to do, whether you want to match or whether you want to defend, or try and get unique. So have that one. Number 3, I did have Sean Manor. Again, really just targeting this matchup. It's a common theme across the competition at this stage because we saw what North Melbourne were able to do against Richmond last weekend. So expecting something very similar. The appeal I have with Sean Manor though is that because he's a little bit younger than a lot of the other guys and maybe not classed as a superstar at this stage, he's very unlikely to get that rest time that the Bailey Smiths of the world and Max Holmes, even Graham Myers to an extent could get some rest time throughout this game in that final quarter. Whereas I don't see that happening for Sean Manor, so he should get forward to game time. And with the way he's been performing for the best part of 5 weeks, or if not even longer, he's actually been averaging super well. Like he's hitting the scoreboard, he's kicked 3 goals in the last 5 of his matches, and still hitting the lowest of an 87. So this could be a pretty good ceiling for him. We have seen that ceiling with a 144 against Saints back in round 19. Even last weekend he had a 120 in against a tougher Sydney matchup. So I'm liking what he's doing. He obviously has some amazing pedigree in terms of his fantasy numbers in the VFL, so we know he can absolutely rack it up when given the opportunity. It's just not having the best role at this stage, but he's finding a way. So I think he's a great option. Yes, he's a little bit more expensive than what we'd want, but with a unique unique tag next to him, he could be the difference for you. So simply going from a Daniel to him could be 60 points this week. So that's a really good option for a lot of the competition. The next forward on the list at number 4 was Chad Warner up against West Coast Eagles. This is just a very fruitful matchup for most midfielders, so he should just have an absolute day out. He hasn't played them this season so far, but when we've seen Warner come up against these easier teams, we've obviously seen, high 90s, if not tons. So against North, 107, Essendon, 95. Richmond was just an 80, so a bit down there. Essendon early in the year, an 86. I'm struggling to find a bit more here. But yeah, I think that's sort of reason why he's a little bit further down on this list, but he still is a very viable player to go with, and he's done 390s back to back. So yeah, he's a decent option there if you, again, wanted to go with someone that is probably a little bit on the higher end in the owned category in the top 100. So again, see what you want to do. But number 5 is where it sort of gets a bit spicy. I've got Boak in his farewell game as a pretty decent option. He's been just quietly pretty good in the last 3 weeks without it being his farewell game. He's hit a 90, 103, and a 97 in what I can only assume is some CBA numbers and some wing time, as he usually does. Good amount of time on ground. He's just going to give it everything he can in this final game. He is a legend of the club, and if not a legend of the AFL, with a lot of games under his belt, and has been a good fantasy player in his time. But at 701k, it's not going to cost you a hell of a lot to grab him and to have that ceiling. They're going to feed him, so he's probably going to have 10 plus marks. He probably gets spent a little bit of time up forward to kick a goal and celebrate, but I'm just expecting them to feed him a fair bit. So I do like him as a great option. The full forwards, though, you've got Mackay as a bit of a unique one. We saw him return to a bit of form last week against Port Adelaide with 7 goals with a 122. If he's starting to capture some of that Coleman form that we've seen from him in the past, he could be absolutely anything against Essendon. So he could definitely have a pretty big ceiling score there. Probably kicks half a dozen or so. The only thing I say, a little bit of flag with that is Essendon have been a little bit more competitive than what we sort of expect them to be with a much younger side. And with Merritt back and whatnot, they could actually challenge the likes of Carlton. So I'm not sure quite how I see about this one, but definitely an option nonetheless at his price range. And finally, Thrilthorpe is on the final list on this name. Oh, sorry, the final name on this list, if I can get my bloody words straight. He's up against North. We've seen Jezza Cameron kick 11 against them as that key forward. So if there's any chance that Tex Walker gets rested for this game, then Thilthorpe could be absolutely anything. Obviously does the backup ruck stuff as well, so he gets a lot of extra points every now and then, plus the inside time. But yeah, could absolutely have a day out. The only slight concern is if he gets rested. Obviously, they're going to be minor premiers as long as they win. So they will be priming their players ready to go for the finals for the first time since 2017. So they're definitely in a good position to be able to rest their best players. And you definitely consider that Thilthorpe is a key component to that. So he may have a little bit less time on ground. So that's the only slight thing to be aware of. Besides that, realistically, there's not a huge amount of options that I sort of found out. Like, I wouldn't be going in Phillimore against the likes of Brisbane Lions. That's a tougher matchup. I didn't mention Bailey Smith here, but if you don't have Bailey Smith, you just need to have him at this stage. Even if you're, you know, I just don't. I can't even think of a scenario where you wouldn't have Bailey Smith. He could just be absolutely anything this week. We saw Harry Sheed will have 54 touches in this matchup. Bailey Smith could very much equal that this weekend. It is a very good VCC option, so you'll definitely want him. And we're getting to some very unique areas, so I think I'll just move on from here. Matthew Kennedy, if you wanted to go there, but I'm not expecting anything amazing from him this weekend, so that's probably where I'll leave it for the forwards. We'll move on to just touching on the rucks, I guess. I don't think many of us are doing ruck trades this week. Like I said in my review video, if you have the likes of Max Gawn, Rowan Marshall, or Tim English, I just think you ride all three of them out and just let it be. They should have decent scores. They all have some decent matchups. Max Gawn's the only one with a slightly tougher one against Darcy Cameron, but he does have a pretty good history against there, so I'm still expecting something decent. I would not be trading into Tristan Cherry, though, and he's listed at number 5 for me. He's got the toughest matchup against Rob O'Brien from the Crows, so that's just an extremely tough matchup. I wouldn't be going there. So yeah, I'm just avoiding that one. He's put up a 77 against him early in the season. So yeah, wouldn't be going there at all. Not going with Peter Ladhams because obviously expecting Brodie Grundy to be back. So that is where my rankings start. Brodie Grundy at number 1. If you can get unique and have that ceiling from a Brodie Grundy, then absolutely do it. This is assuming that he is back and ready to play. It is obviously something that they may decide just to rest him for the remainder of the year, and obviously there's no point getting him injured in the final game of their season. Might as well get him ready. So there is something there if he were to miss that you could go with Peter Ladhams, but maybe as more of a forward option, not as a ruck option in my opinion. So, but if Brodie Grundy plays, I think he's definitely worthwhile grabbing, even though he is extremely expensive at $1.22 million. It's going to hurt, but yeah, his will be super unique, and he can absolutely put up a massive ceiling against the West Coast Eagles. Number 2, I'd roll Marshall up against Briggs. I expect him to go quite well. He does quite like that matchup. Number 3 had Max against DC, expecting him to again put up a decent 120. And then English at number 4. He has the likes of the Twin Towers, Sean Darcy and Luke Jackson, assuming Luke Jackson plays. So that's going to be a bit of a tougher one. So I probably wouldn't be trading into that one this time of the year. We saw him go 114 against them early in the season, but I believe that was only against Luke Jackson because Sean Darcy was still injured. So not expecting him to go anything above that. But again, finals like game, anything could happen. It's going to be pretty high intensity, so that anything could happen. So that is the rucks done and dusted. We'll move into the midfielders, and this is where we could find a few of the ceiling scores that we're looking for. My number 1 target has to be Isaac Heaney. He could just be absolutely anything, you know. Dead rubber game. They're not playing finals. It's the final game of their season. They probably want to kick off their 26 campaign with an absolute massive win to give them the most inspiration to do well next season. So I could see Isaac Heaney absolutely having a day out, like we've seen in the past, where he kicked 5 goals for that 166 against North. I could very easily see a similar game to that against West Coast, who are probably arguably a little bit easier if you look at just the pure matchup. So he does love versing them. He has had some decent scores against them in the past. So I would definitely encourage people to be looking at Isaac Heaney as an option this weekend. He is 12% owned, so not super highly owned. Probably 50% owned in the top 100. I actually haven't checked. But yeah, he is definitely a worrying one if you were going into a matchup and you didn't own him. Definitely could be something to consider. Number 2, I had his teammate in Errol Goulden, who is the most traded in for midfielder at this stage. He could absolutely be anything as well. We haven't probably had quite the ceilings we expected from Errol since his return. He's put up a couple 120 pluses, but ultimately has been pretty subpar. Last 6 scores, he's only had the 1 ton. Very high floor, though, of 80. So he's always been super consistent. His time on ground isn't as good as what it has been in the past, so that's probably a big factor why he hasn't had those big ceiling scores. But again, West Coast Eagles, very good matchup for those winger midfielder types. I wouldn't be surprised if Errol Gordon has another 115 in him for this matchup. He has had a really good history against West Coast where he's hit 140s and 130s in the past. So yeah, I could absolutely see him having a day out to finish off the season, and as is an absolute fitness beast, so I don't expect him to be rested at any stage. They're just going to go full out with the dead rubber game, so yeah, they'll be celebrating their players as much as possible. Number 3, I had Jordan Dawson. If you just didn't own him, I think you'll want him for this matchup against North. I don't even know where he is. He's just that highly owned. No one's trading him in. But this could be absolutely anything as well. He's the leader of the club, so he could absolutely have a day out. Yes, there are slightly concerns that he may get rested at some stage. But with the way he's been performing the last little period of time, he is definitely someone that I think will get the job done for you and is a decent captain option if you wanted to look there. So I think it's a no-brainer. You want to pick him up. Number 4, I had Zach Butters. A lot of people would have traded him out, a couple of weeks ago when he had that tag coming. I think it was last week. But up against the Gold Coast Suns, he could have an absolute day out. Again, celebration of his coach, a coach that he absolutely loves, and a teammate that he has probably looked up to for a very long time. So he could have an absolute day out against the Suns, a good matchup. So expecting him to have a decent day out with a ceiling, so he could definitely be a decent target at a cheaper price at 923k. We have seen him perform quite well in recent times. Obviously had a slight tag from Cooper Lord on the weekend for just 29 touches, but we've seen him hit nearly 40 touches throughout the best part of the second part of the season. So definitely worthwhile having a look at him. And then 5th, I've just thrown in Josh Dunkley there. I think he's still a very decent option. Again, in terms of their finals campaign, this match against Hawks is a really season-defining one because whoever wins pretty much finishes top 4 and the other does not. So definitely it's going to be a pretty tight, contested game, I would have thought. So that means Josh Dunkley is going to have a fair few tackles, I'd imagine. Obviously, a fair few disposals. I don't expect him to get any attention. I expect Nash to sort of stand on McCluggage and try and stop him to do that. So I think Josh Dunkley's a safer option that you can go to, but may not get you that massive ceiling that we're looking for. The only other factor that I thought of with Josh Dunkley is that his last 2 games at the Gabba has been that 130 and 137. So that was the last 2 games at the Gabba. No, 33 and 132, I think. Sorry. So yeah, loves playing at the Gabba, so definitely see a decent game from him there. It is a bit of a tighter ground, so it means more tackles. So yeah, I think he's a viable option. I had a few more mentioned in the midfield that could absolutely have a day out. So I had Zach Merritt, who, in my opinion, is the final round specialist. Where can I find him? He's probably not even anywhere around because no one's considering him. But obviously, returning from a hand injury, he is just the finalist specialist in my opinion. Because if you look through the last 3 years, he goes absolutely massive in his final game of the round. He's gone 149 last year. He went 146 the year before that, and went 125 in the year before that. So he likes to finish the season off strong, and he does whatever he needs to. We typically see him go in a bit more of a halfback role for the final round of the season for some reason. He just seems to get it done. So I would not be surprised if he has a day out against Colton on the Thursday night. So it does mean that you have to lock your trade out early, though, is the only concern. And when we're looking at Merritt's history against Colton, he hasn't had the best history. So maybe some I probably wouldn't factor in, but definitely someone I would be surprised if he goes well. A few others that a lot of people are looking at. Obviously, an Anderson is on this list, 5th most traded in so far. I just worry that there's going to be a tag in this game. Yes, it's more of a dead rubber game. Port Adelaide not playing for anything, but are they going to keep the ball off of the Suns a fair bit? Obviously, they're going to try and get up for the game to send off their players a fair bit. So, do they run the tag against Anderson? We've seen Port Adelaide run the double tag against the likes of Fremantle only a couple weekends ago. Kept both of them to sub 90. So, I could definitely see someone going to Anderson. And we know how he performs with the tag. So, I think that's enough to scare me off. As I've been saying for a long while, but he does know how to find a ceiling when he does knock competition. So, someone that you could consider, but not for me. Callahan was another one against St Kilda, decent matchup, but does the competition from a Windhager? Maybe not. I don't think we've seen that recently, maybe once or twice, but it's probably enough just to worry me off. And again, I don't know if he quite has that massive ceiling that we're looking for right now. When you compare him to the likes of a Gordon or a Heaney who has that 150 ceiling, I don't see that from a Callahan. So I definitely look elsewhere for now. Matt Rao is another one somewhere here. Very, very expensive, right? He had the poor game on the weekend, 86, but expecting them to bounce back a fair bit after a disappointing loss, and I think he'll get up for this game and have a bit more of a tackle presence. So I could see him going well, but not enough to break into my top 5 at this stage. I think a lot of these guys are a bit more of a safe option. So yeah, I just don't know how I feel about that one. But again, Port Adelaide are a bit of an easier matchup. They have been for the last sort of 5 to 6 weeks. We've seen some pretty big scores against them. So I could definitely see Matt Rao going quite well. And finally, Hewitt was sort of the only name that sort of popped up. If you don't have Bontempelli, definitely a worthwhile one to look at. But again, finals like game, does he competition? Does he not get the ball as much? Definitely a big possibility. So Hewitt is the only other name that I wanted to mention. Not a sexy name by nature, but obviously does have a pretty decent ceiling when he gets around the ball with his tackling presence and a lot of disposal. So up against Essendon could be absolutely anything. So something that you could look at, but again, not an absolute sexy name that to look at. So that is probably where I'll leave it with the midfielders. We'll finish off with the defenders, and there's not a huge amount of options that we're looking at here. I don't think many of us are shopping in this range, but just to cap it off, Max Holmes is my number 1. If you don't have him, I think you absolutely need to. He could be absolutely anything in this game. Very similar to the likes of Sheedle. Does a lot of the halfback stuff and the inside mid stuff, so he could have a day out. Good VCC option. Lockie Whitfield is my number 2. He has a St Kilda, which absolutely give up many, many points to defenders at the moment. If you just look back and see what Essendon did against them last week, we saw Redmond go 140, McGrath go 130, so there's just points to be had, and I definitely could see Whitfield and Ash both have 130s in this game, so decent options to look at if you are not an owner of both. Number 4 had Josh Dacos, and this is one of the reasons why I didn't suggest him as a trader target, because I think he's a decent trading target, because he has a very, very good matchup for designated kicker players. And again, Bruce Free Footy, probably going to play a lot of keepy offs to try and just get the win done and get it done. So I could see him having a decent ceiling of a 120 there. And finally had Tom Stewart as a bit more of a speculative pick with Richmond matchup. Could get the job done. Didn't play massively last time they played, but again, very different scenario against in the final round. Trying to play a bit of bruise-free footy, probably chipping around a fair bit. So I could see him having a pretty good score, but maybe not the ceiling that we're looking for. As I said, he's only had a max of 112 previously, so that's probably about his ceiling at this stage. So that's all the trading top options that I had listed. Please let me know if you think there's anyone else to consider. Zorko, uh, I don't love it. I don't love it for the fact that it is a top four deciding game. I think Hawks are going to press quite hard, and they're obviously going to know that he's going to be the best ball mover for them. So they may even have someone stand next to him a lot of the time and just keep him accountable and not allow a huge amount of chip ball. So I wouldn't be trading into him. I just don't see that ceiling coming from him this week. So I'm not a huge fan. So that is all for the trading options this week. To recap my top five trade-ins of the week. So I think number one has to be Max Holmes. I think he has the biggest ceiling that we could see this weekend. Again, making that comparison to Harry Sheezel, definitely could have a field day. The only slight concern I have is, again, the resting. Similarly, with Jerry McCameron, I could definitely see him having an absolute day out. Like I said, 11 goals is on the cards for him as for the chase of the 100 goals. So here's my number two. Number three, I had Isaac Heaney. He's got that massive ceiling. Final game of the round. Final game of the season. So I think he's go well. Similarly with his teammate in Errol Goulden at number four. Number five, I did have Brian Myers as a bit of a safer option as well. He should get the job done. But to extend that, my 7 and 8 is Sean Manor and Lockie Whitfield. So that's probably about where I finished off. But to finish off the video, I'll quickly show you what my trades are looking like at this stage. It has obviously changed a fair bit. So I am trading out Rankin. Obviously, he needs to go. And the likes of Caleb Daniel, saying goodbye to two players that I have had all season. And getting in the likes of Errol Goulden, who I believe can have a pretty big ceiling. I would look in different areas of this, but I don't have a huge amount of coin left over, so I would prefer Heaney, but I only have enough for Errol Gordon at this stage. And trading in Brokey as a forward option, I think he has a field day for his final game. They're going to feed him a fair bit of the ball, whether that's on the wing, off halfback, in the forward line. He's just going to get the ball at all possible costs. And at the end of the day, I'm not fighting for anything. I'm 646. Hoping to break into top 500 just would be nice, but at the end of the day, isn't the biggest deal to me. I'm not in any league matchups or anything like that. I've got this Calvinator one up here, but that's just a mate's league. So that's how I'm sort of looking. In terms of the way I'm structuring up, I am looping Connor Rosie and McKercher this week, seeing how they go, and then hopefully I'll take one of them. And then, if not both of them, I don't know if I can take both of them at this stage, depending of if Boxall plays or Nguyen plays or whatnot. I may be forced just to take one and then run into the others, but I'm pretty confident on a lot of the other players that they'll get the job done. So that's just where I sit at this stage. But yeah, hopefully you have enjoyed this series throughout the season. Obviously, like I said, this is the final trade mode of the year. It has been a journey. It has been a lot of effort to do these videos with a lot of research involved. So hopefully you have enjoyed, and hopefully it's been useful throughout the season. So if you have any feedback or anything else you'd like to see in future years, if I do decide to keep going with this, yeah, please leave it down below. It would be absolutely amazing to know what you guys would like to see. But besides that, please leave a like, subscribe, and do all those great things. I will see you tomorrow for captains heading into the round. Obviously, huge video. There are a lot of options to dissect, so stay tuned for that one. Besides that, if you have any questions, send them down below or see my QU link below. Besides that, I'll see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.